Hello, friends. Welcome back to another edition of the Panel Jumper Light. This is a semi-weekly, semi-whenever we get around to it thing that Cole Hornaday and I do. Today we have a special guest. As you can see, to my this way is the trusty henchman himself, former Perfect Bound podcast panelist, Chris Casos. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hello, doing all right. How are you guys?
Not too bad. And of course, that's Mr. Cole Hornaday over there.
Hey,
Hi, Cole. How are you?
I'm all right.
Hi.
Wolf Fungus Cat is around here somewhere.
Yeah.
We
So,
need to do a Doctor Evil entrance.
He may come back and hop up on me or claw his way up onto my shoulders again. So we'll see.
we appreciate cat bombs here at the Panel Jumper Light. So yeah, we are three-fourths of the Perfect Bound podcast, and Chris, we've talked about this on the show before, but one of the sad realities is that the Comics Dungeon and Corner Comics were victims of the pandemic and I guess bad decisions by those who control the industry. So, but you've started trusteehenchmancom. Can you talk a little bit about what
Yes.
that is?
Yeah. So I wanted to. So basically, for well over the past 16 years for the store, I always did like the weekly newsletter, and I always got a decent amount of interest in that, and people like the focus on different, you know, basically pinpointing all the mess of news in the industry. So I was like, oh, maybe there's still a way I can do that somehow. Um, and the thing I've always loved about working in a comic book store is connecting people to art. So it's like, okay, now I always wanted to get back to writing because I used to do a lot of articles like around 2015, kind of stopped around 2016, and that was a previous incarnation of the Trusty Henchman. So it's like, okay, time to roll all those ideas back together, and uh, but let's try and get paid for it if I can. So opened up a Patreon, and I've got an amazing amount of support from people so far, and yeah, so just trying to slowly build it up and see what I can do with it. Um, because now I actually finally have time to read and watch movies again.
So Chris,
So
your trusty henchman Patreon is reviews, industry news, artist spotlights, but you're also writing journalist pieces. You're also writing essays and your
yes,
takes on industry events, trends, and things that chap your delicate places.
yeah, things that just kind of get my ire. The very first one of those articles was why Robert Kirkman infuriates me, and it's a thing that like just my co-manager Nicole, Scott the owner, everybody, that whenever Kirkman would do a certain thing that's more on the industry side, we'd always just be like that son of a bleep blop. And but it's the kind of stuff that nobody really knows about in general as far as the general public, because it in the end isn't as big as how much money he's making from Walking Dead or whatever. So I just wanted to talk about stuff like that, and then I put it up to a poll this a week or two ago of like what kind of subjects would people like me to start working on, and I wanted to talk about mental health in comics, and I want to talk about the business of variants because it's such a weird part of this industry,
Mhm.
and yeah, just other things. I want to do some really like long form reviews of weird projects. There's one I put up that I'll do eventually, which is about Southland Tales, which is one of the most beautiful disasters that you can ever watch. And also had a comic and like was a big multimedia project.
Mhm.
So, just things like that.
I
I'm
saw
really
that.
curious about.
I
Go
saw
ahead.
that poll, Chris, but I didn't participate because I wanted to read all of those articles.
Yeah.
They'll all get done. It was just about like what I focus on. And the thing is, there was a tie, but the thing that was in the lead was the variant. So that's what I'm starting with right now. And so I got the first one of those up and on the Patreon. It's not going to be up on the website. The big articles, the long form ones, I'm going to let go for 2 to 4 weeks on the Patreon to give people that kind of, exclusive first shot at it. And then they'll pop up on the main website, the trusteehenchmancom.
What other?
So you have various levels of Patreon supporting subscription fees, right? So like there's help out my memory here. It's $5.
$3 is the entry that gets you the newsletter every week, and that gets you, like, I do upcoming comic showcase. Basically, like, I go through the order forms as if I was still ordering for the store and be like, this is something that I would have focused on. This is something that now that I can't highlight it in the store, I can highlight it somewhere at least. And then, $5 gets you early access to the basic comic book reviews, and then, everything before that. $10 gets you access to the movie reviews and early access to movie reviews. I want to do toy reviews at some point, but I got to buy a camera, and we'll get to that soon. And then my love, and $100 gets you my body and soul. But
wow, I gotta start saving my money.
Yeah, no, $50 basically I become your personal shopper, like we were shopping at the store again. And you also get to request a particular. His request was he just finished watching the new She-Ra series, and it's left a void in his soul. And so, and then the $100 you choose the things I review. You get to choose blog articles, certain amounts, stuff like that.
Review copies and that sort of thing. Or are you having to pay out of pocket for all that?
Other news that are like, it's utterly important to be on the brand new stuff, because I have so much. I've got to get a little spotlight on these things.
Yeah.
So while I will talk about new stuff from time,
Gentlemen.
yeah.
I think so. I do have a question, and I'm gonna say it, and hopefully it's not too big of a deal. And it's something that you enjoy. Are you finding reading comics more enjoyable these days?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, the main problem with reading comics and comic book retail is when you're working the store. You're working the store. If you're doing it right, you're busy, and I would have a lot of 10-hour to 15-hour days. And by the end of one of those days, you don't want to see another comic book. So it's not that you don't enjoy the comics, but you don't want to make the time to read those, because once you get home, you just kind of want to shut off, So now that's changed, I can actually, take some time, take a couple hours out of the day and read some books, There's just a couple larger books that I kept on putting off, and it's just like, I bought you because I know I want you. But man, you look like a job, to have to read it. And now it's not a job. It is, but it's different. So yeah.
Cool. So
it's mostly the issue of bandwidth, you
right.
know, and I finally got some.
Yeah, well, speaking of bandwidth, I experienced an issue here with my internet. So hopefully the lagging wasn't too bad these past couple of minutes while Chris was talking. Sorry, Chris. Anyway, so people can find you at trusteehenchman.com. Where else is your stuff being held?
If you go to trusteehenchman.com, there's a full set of links right at the top. And yeah, it's at Patreon. I've got the Facebook page. I've got a Twitter page. I've got a Tumblr page. I've got the Instagram page. I got the RSS feed. I'm also on Coffee. If you don't know what Coffee is, it's basically you give the price of a coffee to somebody as a donation, just to give them some extra support here and there. So yeah, I just kind of rolled out most of the social medias and connected them all to the main website. And I'm not much of a social media like Twitter person, but I'm trying to get the links up there. And so yeah, basically you can kind of find me everywhere now, almost.
Cool.
So yes.
Alrighty. Well, we are here to talk about things in the comic book world, and one of the first things that struck my that I saw. Struck my fancy, saw my eye. I don't know what the phrase I'm trying to say here.
Struck your eye. Yeah.
Struck your eye. Hit me right in the face.
In the eye.
Poked me in the eye. So It was an article that Cole posted to the Panel Jumper Facebook page, which said that John Ridley's new Batman is going to have a better than a 47% chance of being a person of color.
Such a weird way of putting that.
I thought that was a very peculiarly specific number.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were talking earlier about how it's a 4-part series. It's a 4-part mini.
Yeah.
And then when you're looking at the percentage, I'm like, are the stories, say, perhaps set in different chronological periods, and are we meeting different eras and different generations? And is this Batman he's sharing with us an evolving entity? So my mind went all over the place. I'm like, okay, well, the 47%, the fact that the screenwriter of was it 12 Years a Slave?
12 Years a Slave.
Is writing this. He's teasing us that it may be a bat person of color. I'm like, I'm all the way in. It's like now you've actually teased my imagination enough to invite me to try to figure out what your really befuddling comment means, if anything.
Right. It could be a generational thing. There's I forget what it was called, but there was a Batman Elseworlds that started with like caveman era Batman, and he met Vandal Savage the Immortal, and then it jumps to like different time periods of the Bruce Wayne lineage, and it ends with like a future Batman, and so like maybe something like that. But I also would like it to just be like a straightforward, like, here he is, Black Batman.
Yep, I would be all in for that too. So either way, sounds good to me.
Give Bruce a vacation.
Yeah,
he needs it.
So by the by, I finished my little side reading project, which was to read all 86 issues of the Tom King Batman run. And I'm glad I did that. You remember when we were doing the podcast, I got very excited about Tom King as a writer and had never once touched any of his Batman stuff. And but I also have a real love-hate relationship with the work that he does. I think that, his Vision stories and his Mr. Miracle stories were the 12-parter were really exceptional. But I took real umbrage with the Omega Men and what was the crisis, the mental health crisis one?
Identity Crisis. Heroes in Crisis.
Heroes in Crisis. I have a major problem with how he conducted the storytelling in that. And I hope that you address that series when you talk about mental health in comic books, because I know you were talking about that was one of your. Oh, you weren't even going to touch on that one?
I was going to focus more on customers and retailers' mental health.
Oh,
like the stores.
Wow, you know what? I was this close to unsubscribing to you.
Okay.
Don't tell him what to write.
Unless you pay me $50. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't call the shots. All right.
So So this person of color, this 47% possible person of color Batman is not going to be Bruce Wayne. Who are the other candidates? Is it someone we know? Is it someone that Ridley's going to make up? Is it Lucius Fox's son?
Yeah, it could be that, because they've already it's confusing with all the relaunches and everything. But he was also one of the Bat family during like the New 52. It was a Batwing, I think, was the name of that version of the character.
Oh, I thought Batwing was the West African, Native African character.
Yeah, but at some point I thought Fox's son also donned that costume. Okay. But I could be mistaken. It's just that there's
between all the reboots, because I think that was the Batwing identity from the New 52.
Right, yeah.
Hopefully someone can correct us. Anyway.
It could also be I didn't read much of them, but there was that period where Batman he wasn't a Robin. He was like a new sidekick. He was supposed to be the one that operated during the day.
Right.
So it could be him as well.
Yeah. And I forget. And as I said, I just got done reading that whole run, but character names do not stick in my brain. So I have to go look it up. I know precisely who you're talking about.
And it could be Orpheus, that one Batman character that everybody forgot about, So it's like there's a range of people that they can kind of pull from.
Sure.
But yeah.
There was So there was a big DC event this last week. We've been talking a lot about DC lately because they've just been making so many changes, and I can't imagine what it was like for these people who were trying to organize this fandom event, and people at DC who are trying to organize this fandom event. In the meantime, having to deal with the fallout of like an editorial change and all that. But another thing that came out. Oh, before I mention that, I should say that we are going to show part 3 of our Barry Ira Geller interview today. I keep forgetting to plug those, but it's coming up. It's in the description, so hopefully you'll stick around for that. But what came out of DC's fandom event was the relaunch finally of Milestone.
Yeah.
Which apparently was supposed to relaunch like back in 2015, but went into litigation, which recently I think was cleared up.
Yeah, this was a topic we talked about on the panel, Perfect Bound, like multiple times.
Yeah.
And 5 years is a bit of a wait from the initial announcement.
And it didn't come out until, a year ago, that one of the reasons why the whole process is being held up is because Dwayne McDuffie's widow was actually suing for back royalties and things, and they had to settle that. Just totally understandable. It's really unfortunate there wasn't more transparency happening there, because there was so much. I mean, because it was coming in dribs and drabs. It's like, this is going to be, the Dakotaverse is going to be called Earth M for Milestone. Is that right? Something like Didio had announced something like that.
Well, because 2015 was when Multiversity came out, so like it could have been right then and there. It would have been perfect. So probably was part of that Grant Morrison giant, expansion of the multiverse. And then they had to drop it, like they dropped so many other things. So yeah. And then who knows where it was supposed to fit with Dan Didio's 5G plan, and who knows if it was supposed to be part of the Watchmen crap, so it's just one of those things of like, I'm a little glad that it kind of got delayed for all that other mess to happen. But I mentioned it in the newsletter for this morning. The part that worries me is that I'm not entirely sure they're giving it as strong of a push as they need, because they're not doing that much print material, and a lot of the fan base, like the diehard fan base of that material, is a bit older, and they're probably not going to want as much digital. So they're gambling whether they could pull those people in, or if they're going to solely depend on new readership.
Yeah, because I was thinking about the comments you made in the newsletter as well, that actually they're going to have to look at starting pretty much from whole cloth, building their Milestone audience, because if they plan to go digital,
right?
Which I have plenty of issues with, and one of them is the assumption that the audience that you are trying to reach has access to digital. And reading this latest round of interviews with Jim Lee, I'm like, you are being really naive with your perception on who all has accessibility. I mean, we're watching daily the challenges across America, in Seattle alone, about restarting public schools, and there are some major hurdles for our community to get over with accessibility. And the community you want to be reaching with your Milestone comics, you can't bet on them having like complete and utter accessibility to digital downloads and comics. I think that's a really, really, really stupid thing to believe. And so, yeah, I agree with you, leaning to floppies, because you think that, who read the Milestone books? That was back in the early 90s, early to mid 90s. And they're all pretty much forgotten because the trades, just look at what the trades are going for in the secondary market. The trades are really, really expensive.
Yeah, it's tough to find that stuff.
Yeah, you can find the individual issues if you have the patience to go through quarter bins across America. But that's
the last time we at the dungeon saw single issues, I mean, was like a year or two ago.
Right.
And because people snatch them up pretty quickly.
Right.
And then, where are you going to get to a quarter bin this time of the COVID era? And
the trade collections are limited. They have like the one or two of the early story arcs from Static and Hardware and Icon and Blood Syndicate. But those trades on Amazon are like $50, $60, $75 because they were such low print runs, and on eBay as well. I know this because I was trying to snatch up as many as I could when Andrew and I were researching our Panel Jumper episode. And the other thing is like the Static Shock animated series. That was like an award winner, very successful, but those are not, I don't think those have been re-released on DVD. They're not, are they even streaming on,
like the DC?
Yeah, I guess it would be
HBO Max now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, and I would hope so, but no one's talked about it, at least not made a big announcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you're going to launch this, and they're launching it in February, especially depending how the elections go, like this is a time where it would behoove you, DC, to AT&T, to get your young black hero out there who already had a successful cartoon series. And like, again, I don't want to speak to the greed of the corporate world, but like, this is the chance to make some money, and then hopefully get some representation out there and everything else that we need.
I think the thing that upsets me the most is like they refuse to learn from Black Panther. It's like that's everything you need to know about a successful film depicting Black characters reaching a Black audience. It's all right there, and you have the material to work with, but you don't seem to be interested, and that's really unfortunate. I mean, there's all kinds of Static Shock, Icon, and Rocket are really, really fun, exciting characters, and all kinds of amazing things can be done across multi entertainment platforms with those characters. And you're absolutely right. You need high accessibility, but also you got to figure out how to reboot them in a way, because you're pretty much going to be starting from whole cloth. Because I don't think not enough people, there's no one in the age group you want to reach who knows who they are.
I think the rebooting they will have to their benefit, now that we're in 2020, and DC and Marvel can break out some of their content and be a little bit more social, political, and they will want to do that. And it's just kind of like, okay, reboot the Milestone universe in the context of the 2020 protests, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
It's, I mean, crap. That writes itself pretty easily and pretty quickly.
Sure. Yeah.
So if they miss that, it's just like, what was they going to do? Like, they need to pull away from the generic superhero stories, because we, in the past, how long was it since Milestone ended? 20 years?
1999.
Oh yeah. Okay. So in the past 20 years, like, we've done all the basic stories. Like, let's make this the social political focus.
Right.
So yeah.
All right. Well, February 2021 is when Milestone is set to hit your digital bookshelves, I guess. The Static Shock is going to be a digital comic, but maybe it'll go to print later on if there's demand for it.
They are doing the graphic novel immediately after the digital, and they're separate things. So. Okay. Because I don't think they announced the creative team to the digital. They announced the creative team to the graphic novel. And Kyle Baker is on it. So it's like, that's cool.
But they announced creative teams on at least 3 projects back in 2015. That's what really upsets me, is that they had all these projects in limbo for so long. I mean, and we understand why they were now, but anyway. Yeah. I've been like, I feel very teased at this point, because I've been rallying and very excited about what is to come with Milestone for some time. So I will be there to support them, at least for the inception. Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. And finally, there were a bunch of movie trailers that dropped during the DC Fandom event, one of which was The Batman, starring Team Robert as Bruce Wayne. But what I got excited about was that everybody seems very positive on this one. And but I got excited about just an appearance by Jeffrey Wright, who is a favorite actor of mine. And so... yeah, did y'all catch that The Batman the trailer?
Yeah. To prepare for that because Pattinson, I mean, I've only ever seen him in the like half of what's the vampire thing?
Twilight.
Yeah. But so I watched The Lighthouse the other night. And after seeing him in that, it's just like you can be you could do whatever you want.
He is actually I've actually watched a couple. I've never touched the Twilight films. Feel that like I'm in a safer space because of that. But I always assumed he was just a hack actor. I saw Lighthouse months ago, and I'm like, you are far, and then realized that he had been in other films, and I didn't realize it was him.
Right.
You know, which I frequently do. I'm like, oh, that was, well, he's actually quite good. So he is actually an accomplished actor. Does someone need to be an accomplished actor to play Batman? In my book, no. But we all were fixating on the uber emo vampire character that he made famous, and who wants a Batman who's of that ilk? We don't. So,
well, you know, just remember how up in arms we were when Michael Keaton was announced as the first Batman.
And now, for so many, he is Batman. He is the only Batman. Yeah, that was, I mean, thank goodness we didn't have the internet back when they cast Michael Keaton, because the hue and cry back then was felt through your television and through newspapers and through magazines, you know, and it was raw and vicious and everywhere. And my thinking was, I'm totally behind Michael Keaton. He's a little guy. He's a little guy like me. And bats are little. This works.
The villain is they're teasing the Riddler as the villain, and Batman's got a cool new car. And also dropping at the fandom event was Wonder Woman 1984, which looks like it's trying to be DC's Wonder Woman Ragnarok. It's got a very 80s kind of vibe to it. Chris Pine is the funny foil, you know, but it looks like there's going to be more of a young Diana on Themyscira. How do you pronounce that?
Themyscira.
Oh, okay. Themyscira on her home planet.
Yeah, island.
Or invisible island, whatever it is. So that also dropped, and of course, people before I just bulldoze over this. Anything to say about Wonder Woman 1984?
Anytime they can get back to the island, because that's the only stuff I liked in the first movie.
I'm with Chris. I
think they may have heard some of that feedback.
Yeah. I enjoyed about 60% of the Wonder Woman movie, and most of that was the time we spent on the island. And though I had issues with the ridiculous concept of setting it in World War I, the scenes in the trenches in World War I were really well executed, and I did enjoy them. But I also felt like, you know, the reasons why AT&T said we have to set this in World War I because we can't compete with the concept of Captain America. Like,
you know, if that was the thing, though, they needed to rewrite the entire script, because it ended with a blonde, blue-eyed man named Steve getting into a giant plane and saving the day.
Sure.
This is like,
yeah. You know, we said, but even we're still, Chris, we still said it in World War I, and yet the Germans are still Nazis. Which,
yes.
You know.
Yes.
And where history is concerned, remember there are people who can't parse out the historical distinction between World War I and World War II.
Yeah.
You know, this is a real problem. And when you tell us that in this story that the Germans were the bad guys of the Germans were solely the bad guys of World War I, and they're just like Nazis in World War II, this is really problematic. Yes. And also just despise the ending of that film. Anyway, go ahead. You were
The main villain. It's got two villains. It's got Cheetah and it's got Maxwell Lord. And Maxwell Lord is played by Pedro Pascal, and I think that's going to be amazing. There's a lot there. There's a lot they can do with that, and Pedro Pascal is just great.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, could be a lot of fun.
This is the way. And finally, a teaser trailer leaked. It didn't really drop. It leaked of the Snyder Cut of Justice League that's going to be airing on or streaming on HBO Max next year. A lot of people seem weirdly excited about this. It's gotten a lot of positive buzz, but according, judging by the trailer, they're not done with the sound design yet because it was just Hallelujah. I don't know which cover of the song it was, but yeah. So Snyder Cut. No, y'all are shaking your heads.
Lots of people are super duper excited about it, and they're raving on the internet. But none of those people live in my house.
Yeah.
I never saw the original. I was done. I think they made it pretty clear. I was pretty much done with the Warner Brothers movies, DC movies with Wonder Woman. I was like, I saw Shazam. Okay. Shazam, I think doesn't really count. It's a different gentler kind of film. And I don't think it's ever going to really overlap into the other stories they want to tell. If it does, boy, they're going to have some head pulling happening. But yeah, I just am kind of done with the whole DC movie thing. And to get excited over all the Snyder stuff is just people need more hobbies. I think they need to be sitting down and reading more books and things. I think people need to find more things to do with their hands, like pottery, knitting, sewing, painting, watercolor. Oh, watercolor is such a challenge to you intellectually and creatively. Yeah, there are much healthier things to do with your mind than to spend so many hours either viewing or supporting a Zack Snyder film. I have spoken.
Chris, a rebuttal?
No, I don't know what the word is. What do you say? It's like oversaturated, like the darkness of the films, the coloring, the saturation, everything. There's just so much of that. Like, to give you an example, I'm watching the Netflix series called Dark. It's a German mystery time travel thing. I absolutely love it, but like, it is dark. And so like I have to be in a certain mood to let it go, and I am not in the mood for the Snyder Dark because it doesn't have the content that the German film will have. And yes,
He's always been crazy about his filters, his digital filters.
Oh yeah.
Every movie he's ever made has had some type of heavy hued filter, be it blue, be it red. It's not stylish. It's just, that's like, you can do that in Photoshop. That's really not that.
Yeah.
But that's it's kind of one of his signature things that he's got a stamp on everything. I don't know. More power to him. So Chris, sidebar, where are you at in the Dark series?
I'm about to hit season 2. Okay. I'm getting close. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I don't want to say anything.
I watched the whole thing.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for anybody else.
No, you won't be spoiling.
Go watch Dark,
Right.
please.
No.
Well,
you and I have really contrasting opinions about that show. So I want to hear your take because I have Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just a couple episodes into season 2 of Umbrella Academy. I've been really enjoying it. Alrighty, so as promised, we're going to show part 3 of our interview with Barry Ira Geller. This is where he talks about the fallout of the Science Fiction Land controversy. And for those of you watching who haven't been following this whole drama, up until this point, I included an excerpt from our episode where we talked about this specific thing as sort of a lead-in. It's not long; it's a couple minutes, but then it goes right into our interview where Mr. Geller talks about that experience. So here it is.
Published in 1968, Zelazny's novel Lord of Light introduced readers to a mind-boggling technogarchy, ruled by beings with names and attributes taken from the Hindu pantheon and utilizing a technology so advanced they were unto gods. Lord of Light's plot follows the renegade Mahasamatman, or Sam for short, and his efforts to rebel against his fellow gods by delivering their divine technology to the masses. Sam's revolution spans centuries and skips in and out of storylines reminiscent of ancient Sanskrit texts. But through it all, Zelazny's rather cagey with his storytelling, and the reader's never certain if they are visiting a culture in our ancient past or a distant planet far into the future. The book garnered Zelazny a Hugo and Nebula Award and eventually caught the attention of sci-fi and comic book fanatic Barry Ira Geller. Geller was a would-be screenwriter and film producer with a head full of big dreams to rival those of Kirby and Zelazny put together. Purchasing the book rights, Geller adapted his own screenplay and conceived of an outrageous marketing plan. Lord of Light would start life as a theme park. With the help of some deep-pocketed financiers, Geller planned to build an amusement park in Aurora, Colorado he dubbed Science Fiction Land. His strategy was twofold. Park ticket sales would go toward financing the film, while the park environment itself would stand for the film set for Lord of Light. Science Fiction Land would be a futurist world's fair, a sci-fi kaleidoscope where scientists could come together to tout their latest technologies beside giant Ferris wheels and maglev roller coasters, all beneath a mile-high Buckminster Fuller geodesic dome. Geller enlisted luminaries like author Ray Bradbury and designer Paolo Solari to lay the foundations, but he turned to Jack Kirby to design the park's cosmic architecture. And design Kirby did. The projected layout of Science Fiction Land would engulf nearly 200 acres of Colorado prairie land and cost an estimated $500 million to finance. Though Geller's dreams were undoubtedly genuine, by 1979 the world learned the entire project was a scam. It turns out Geller's business partners were in cahoots with organized crime and more interested in establishing their own zip code than erecting a utopian amusement park. Geller was exonerated of all wrongdoing, but his investment partner and half the Aurora City Council, including the mayor, met with nearly a dozen felony charges and were ultimately relocated to prison.
Do you want to speak to what happened with Science Fiction Land?
Sure.
1979, Science Fiction Land project implodes because the supervising producer who raised private funds illegally and against your better knowledge.
Jerry, that was the name of the supervising producer, told me that he had raised some money and that he was going to pay it back. And I went, what are you talking about? And then I never heard about it again. My attorney wrote to him and said, don't take any money unless it's through our offering. And Jerry didn't listen. And in the end, that's what happened. The guy went, right at that moment, we're having our press release, all this stuff is coming together. It's the time where people write you a check. Mm-hmm. You know, and they came to arrest us. They came, you know, suddenly it was like they were being out there looking for me to arrest me.
My understanding is that where the scheme in Colorado is concerned, these folks wanted to buy up all this real estate, but and build the park. But what they really wanted to do was establish their own zip code, so that they could basically have their own city-state that they could control. It sounds like science fiction. That's dystopian science fiction right there.
The reality is, it's practically true. They wanted to control the water.
I see.
I was told all this by the FBI.
Gotcha.
The guy actually took me aside. I forget his name. I'd have to do the research. But he said we were analyzing all that was happening, and we decided that the guy that was working for you, the supervising producer, was just too clean. He was blaming it too much on you. And so we said, well, let's take a look at him. This is a guy telling me that. So it's recorded somewhere. And sure enough, they found that he was the one making payoffs and owed the money. And what did I know? I mean, I'm just the creative guy coming up with ideas, hanging out with Ray Bradbury and Jack Kirby, and you know, designing this theme park. I kind of like really didn't have my attention too much on what was happening with the mafia at the time.
What did you do at that point when Science Fiction Land collapsed? Did you just say, did you wash your hands clean of it? Did you just drop it in a box? What did you do?
I basically raised, strange as it may sound, about another $50,000 or $60,000 from a very wealthy investor, of which I paid everybody, paid debts off and things, and like and within the context, finished my purchases, payments, and you know, and the limited partnership and attorney's fees and.
Well, it obviously didn't. It obviously didn't destroy your love for the project or for the property for Lord of Light.
No.
So yeah, it was. I'm sure it was quite the experience for Barry having one of his financiers in league with the mob.
Yeah, it was nuts, and it was really, really heartbreaking. And truth be told, from my conversations with him, he put a lot of it away. He did put it in boxes. He did forget about it. And I'm not sure what the inciting incident was that inspired him to bring that artwork out. And, you know, he had it republished through Heavy Metal, or he did a joint agreement with Heavy Metal where they recolored all the Kirby designs, and then he did the Funko action figures. So it sounded to me like he sort of like, you know, put that all away for decades and decades and decades, and then decided to come back and revisit it. It's a story that has always fascinated me, because I remember reading Starlog magazine back in the 70s and seeing a little teeny tiny black and white image of the Science Fiction Land. It's the one that Ben used in the animation when I'm standing in the colorized version. But I saw this little tiny picture about it, and they talked about a lawsuit. They talked about Jack Kirby, and I knew Jack Kirby's name from Fantastic Four and all this stuff. So those events, that situation, those things are all in the back of my mind. Even when I first discovered Roger Zelazny's books as a preteen, I knew that he'd written Lord of Light, that all that was drawn from. So all those things have always been in my head. And I imagine that those events, that disappointment, that pain and frustration creatively has always been in the back of Barry's brain and his heart. And I'm really glad that he's come back and is revisiting it and been sharing. You know, he's been doing convention panels and stuff like that, talking about working with Jack. And he's shared with me, Barry shared with me a lot of documents from that time that are actually really, really exciting to look at. He scanned his date books, his day planning, and his appointments with Jack Kirby and Ray Bradbury and people to meet, talk to them on the phone, or to meet and have dinner with them and what have you. That's really cool. So I'm glad that he's come back to revisit that. Otherwise, beyond Argo, I don't think a lot of people would have been paying attention to the deeper details of this story, because to me it's still a fascinating story.
Yeah, and we'll hear another part of that story next time. We have 2 more installments of this interview to hit. One about the whole Argo experience, and finally what Barry's been up to lately. But that's for another time. Chris Casos, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, you know, I really want you to come back, like more on the reg, and I'm just gonna make that publicly known that I miss at least interacting with you and talking and nerding with you. But you know, we are 2 against 1 with Ben, because you and I, we have our official monikers now. And Ben's got to get his. I'm the panel jumper. You are the trusty henchman.
Oh, I see.
We got to come up with something for Ben Laurance, because you know Ben Laurance does roll trippingly on the tongue, but
I can't give myself a nickname. That wouldn't count. But
can't.
Anyway, we are. I mean, this is we are trying to kickstart the podcast back up again. So if listeners out there enjoy the nerd talk, well, maybe we'll have more of it regularly on the reg, as you say, soon enough. But in the meantime, it's time to draw this to a close. Either of you gents have anything further to say before we say goodbye?
Not really. I just want to. We've been plugging the Trusty Henchman Patreon all along.
Yeah.
If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. It's more than worth your time, and I'm always happy to see a new installment come through my email account. So
yeah, I'm trying to be regular as much as I can.
Well, it's best that we are all regular, Chris.
Yes.
It's really important.
Get your roughage,
You're more regular with your Patreon than we are of ours. I think a notice goes out on the Panel Jumper Patreon like twice a year.
Yeah. But people do get treats. Remember, if you are one of our Patreon supporters, you do get treats.
Yeah,
Nice.
like one of those Holland files.
Yep.
Alrighty. So cool. Chris Casos, trusteehenchman.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cole Hornaday, we all know who you are. Thepaneljumper.com. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bye.